That's right, it's time for the story of a kitten. Because this is the internet after all, and posting cats is the last refuge of all sentient beings right before they shuffle off this mortal coil. My time here is short. I can see the light fading. No, wait, that was just this game transitioning from day into night. No wolves howling, no horrible night to have a cursed text, no nothing. Except the gap between arbitrary levels and a nearly unending drone of your remaining time being turned into points. Welcome to Famicom Friday, where this week we're pulling out the Disk System and booting up a copy of Koneko Monogatari. Blame for this one lies squarely on the shoulders of Felicity and Worcestershire, so you know where to cast aspersions. You are a platforming cat. That is the entire premise. It's subtitled The Adventures of Chatran, who I'm fairly sure was a real doctor, but apparently I'm mistaken and he's a cat. But not just any cat. Ever hear of a film called The Adventures of Milo and Otis, where a cat and a pug are somehow able to speak because that's where technology was at in 1986? Well, here's its video game adaptation. That film, before making it to the States, was a hit in Japan, where just producing it required cobbling together footage from over 40 hours of filming a cat and a dog. Occasionally, a strange Japanese licensing deal results in something halfway decent, like the HAL Laboratories take on Ghostbusters 2. Speaking of, I'm still trying to track down a copy. But more often than not, you get this. A cat, platforming from left to right, who can, let me get this straight, drop eggs on enemies, but only from directly overhead. Strange power for a cat to have, but I'll stomach it, if only because it gets me from one side of this thing to the other. And if you're lucky enough to find eggs that spell out help, you're rewarded with a classic Beatles track. I'm sorry I lied. You're assisted by the brain-damaged pug from the movie. Chatran, aka Milo, aka Cowboy Hat, can also attack the various ill-tempered creatures he comes across by finding bottles of milk in trees, thereby granting invincibility because just why the hell not, or by jumping up on trees and crushing enemies under what appear to be State Fair award-winning persimmons. I also expect that collecting a number of these persimmons results in gaining an extra life, because it'd be strange if that was the one thing this game didn't rip off from Super Mario Bros. I mean, look at this flying fish. That is a cheap knockoff if ever I've seen one, am I right? What makes things worse? Some sections of the game position these bastards such that they just kill you outright from the bottom of the screen as you're floating along in your little cat boat. Which is absurd. Cats don't pilot boats, and even if they could, this fish would be slamming into the aquatic equivalent of a wooden wall. Koneko Monogatari contains 3 pieces of music, one of which I couldn't find the time signature in if you held a gun to my head. I think it was the inspiration for the Pyramid song by Radiohead. The sprites, the ones not swiped from Mario that is, run the gamut from pretty darn decent to these clouds, which look like they burst straight out of Yume Nikki, dragging blood, bowel, and bits of viscera behind them. And yes, this copy of the game does seem to be glitching out some tiles owing to the relative frailty of Famicom Disk System software. Just watch the movie if you really want this experience, and preface that with the FDS boot sound if you like.